Hi again. At Curio we run a number of craft workshops and I'm often asked what I suggest is the basic equipment and supplies that a beginner would need to set up their craft room. Well, of course, it really depends on what sort of crafts that you're doing. But what I can tell you is what equipment and supplies you will need. That can be useful for a number of different crafts. I'm going to split this over two videos, so this video will be mainly about the equipment that you can gather together to set up a craft room. One of the most important pieces of craft room equipment is the surface that you're working on. As you can see, I only have a blank desk here. I normally work on a glass mat, which are readily available from some of the bargain shops in the UK. I like the glass mat because you can clean anything up easily on it. Any spills, you can use it to mix paint on and it just wipes down afterwards. I haven't got it here for two reasons. One is it's still at the workshop. It's a bit bulky and heavy to carry around, which is one of the disadvantages of it. However, that said, if it's in your craft room and you're not going to move it around a lot, that's fine. The second disadvantage is with the camera. The glass mat reflects an awful lot of light, so I haven't bothered bringing it. Alternatives are craft sheets, which are a Teflon coated woven sheet, very similar to a baking sheet, and indeed some people do use baking sheets to work on. Basically it's to keep your main work surface clean. Next on our list is a cutting mat, and you will find these are absolutely invaluable. They're available in a range of sizes. In the UK we can get them A4, A3, A2, A1, A0. Basically in a full range of sizes. They're self-healing, so if you cut them with a craft knife you're not going to go through. So it's great if you're cutting paper, card, that sort of thing. Next on my list is something to cut with, used in conjunction with a cutting mat. These are craft knives. These are my favourite type of craft knives. They've got an interchangeable blade. You just pull, unscrew and pull the collet down and remove the blade. They do, however, need changing on a regular basis. They can easily get blunted. The cheaper alternative is one of these knives, which simply slide out. When the blade becomes blunt, you snap off against one of those lines and you end up with a fresh blade. These are cheap and cheerful. They're not particularly sturdy, they're not accurate to cut with, but for a beginner they might be enough. The third thing I recommend is a steel rule. This one measures in inches and centimetres, but that's not so important. The important bit is the fact that if you're using a cutting knife down the side of it, you're not going to damage the ruler as you would if it was made of plastic or wood. Again, these are available reasonably cheaply, perhaps £1 or £2. Next on my list is some form of paper trimmer. If you're doing a lot of paper crafts, these are really quite essential. This one is by Cricut and it will cut a full 12-inch, which if you do scrapbooking and you want to use 12 by 12 pages, it's perfect for. It has a ruler that slides out of the side so you can measure further down. And the way this works, it has a channel with a little knife in it, and the blade is there. So it works like a craft knife, but it's guided along that channel. It also comes with another blade, which doesn't actually cut all the way through and is used for scoring card. So you can score part way through to make it easier to fold. They're great, they will only cut more or less one piece of paper or card at a time. They're an entry level trimmer. This, as you can see, is a much bigger paper trimmer. It uses a rotating blade here. I don't know if you can see that. and that runs along the edge of this knife to keep it nice and straight, and you basically press down and pull along to cut your paper. The third type of paper trimmer is the Guillotine, and this uses a long blade against a steel rule with a finger guard and something to hold the paper down in place. When you're using these, you need to make sure that you push the blade over towards the rule as you're pulling down, or you'll find you won't get a clean cut. Again, this one is a 12-inch cut on it. This is a smaller one. They're usually sold as a photo cropping guillotine. They work on the same principle, but I find these are really useful if you're using 6x6 papers. Saves getting out the big guillotine to do the same job. I think they're about £7 or £8, and I've honestly found that invaluable. These are the two that I use the most. I prefer the guillotine versions over the roller cutters or the ones with the little slide blades. While we're on the subject of cutting, scissors are an essential item. Buy the best quality scissors you can. Buying cheap means that you'll buy rubbish basically. I always keep a pair of scissors for a particular use, so these I only ever cut paper with, and these I only ever use for cutting fabrics and materials. Don't ask me why, but for some reason if you start cutting fabric with your paper scissors, it blunts them a little and they're not much good with paper anymore, and the same with the fabric scissors. If you start using those for something else, they're not going to be much use for fabric. I don't know the science behind that, it's just the way it is, it seems to work out that way. So make sure you've got a good selection of quality scissors. The next tools I find absolutely invaluable are glue guns. This is arranged by Stick It, and as you'll see they're two different colours, and the two different colours for a reason. The red one is for high temperature hot melt glue, and the blue one is for low temperature hot melt glue. Obviously you need to get the correct glue sticks to go with the right glue gun. The reason for a low temperature glue stick, or should I say, the reason for a low temperature glue gun is if you're doing something where you need to touch the glue, you're not going to burn yourself. So for example, if you're making paper flowers and you're gluing the petals, you can actually manipulate the petals while the glue is still in a pliable sort of state without burning yourself. You are likely to burn yourself with this one if you start messing about with the glue once it's come straight out of the glue gun. There are several types of glue gun available. There are battery operated glue guns. I don't recommend them because they take an awful long time to heat up. They don't seem to get as hot, and the battery life on them isn't very good. These are a craft size glue gun, and they take a 7mm diameter glue stick. There are larger ones which again are available corded or cordless. The cordless ones tend to work better than the battery operated ones because they've got a built-in battery. And they take an 11mm diameter glue stick. You can buy very cheap glue guns. I don't recommend it. I have bought a couple in the past and they just seem to drip glue everywhere and have been a complete waste of time. You'll notice they come with a little stand. It's really important that you use that stand, and when the glue gun's switched on, that it stays in that position. Don't lay it down or you will damage the elements of the glue gun and it will kill it pretty quickly. So make sure when it's plugged in and switched on, it's always sat on its stand until you're using it. Never lay it on its side. Remember, these do get hot, even the cool melt ones. Some people are a little bit immune to being burnt by glue guns. Other people find it extremely painful and blister very easily. So my advice to you is, when it's on, keep your fingers away from that part. My next recommended piece of equipment is a heat gun. Again, I think this is from the same company as the glue guns that I use, and I find these are really, really useful. They're sold primarily for heating up embossing powders and melting embossing powders, and they work very similar to a hairdryer. The only difference is this is incredibly hot. So when you're using it, make sure you don't get your hand in front of it. And when you put it down on the surface, use the stand because it could burn through the surface. I find this useful for drying gesso and drying paint. It's also good for drying texture paste and glues. It just gives it that little bit of a boost to dry off. And if you're art journaling, you don't want to be waiting for paint to dry around, so a quick blast with this will get it dry enough to work on again. As I said before, they're very, very hot, so do be careful. There is a risk of burning yourself. There's a sticker there to warn you that it's a hot surface and to avoid contact. One of the uses for these that I find really useful is if you're using a glue gun, you can get some stringy bits. And once the glue has set and has cooled down and you end up with all these stringy bits, if you give it a blast with the heat gun, all the stringy bits melt away. My next essentials are paintbrushes, and again, go for a decent quality brush. Don't buy some of these cheap packs that you can get because you won't use the brushes in them. You might use them once and throw them away. Something like these, maybe a couple of quid each. They're very good. I've used them for a long time and they're just like new. However, my favourite crafting brushes are these. And these are sold as children's paintbrush sets from a well-known Swedish furniture store. They're about £3 a set. I find them absolutely invaluable. There's a good range of sizes. The 1-inch brush in particular I use an awful lot, and I even use this to paint furniture with chalk paint. You can buy expensive paintbrushes for chalk painting, but I find even the 1-inch brush is big enough to cover large areas. It's also small enough that you can get in all the nooks and crannies. Piece of equipment that you might not have thought of, but I find these invaluable, are palette knives. This is a metal one. They come in plastic. They may be called spatulas. I find them great for all sorts of things, using texture pastes, anything that's a thick medium, for smearing paint on things. And I found myself using this a lot more than I thought I would do. So it's well worth getting yourself a supply of these. They come in different shapes and sizes. And again, as I said, you can get some plastic ones, some metal ones. This is a stainless steel one. And again, I've been using this for years. This is a brayer, which has been very well used, as you can see. Again, brayers have 101 different uses. If you glue in paper to card, you can use it to make sure that you've got no bubbles. You can use it to apply ink onto paper. You can use it to spread around paint. Again, it's another tool that I didn't think I'd need, but I do find it invaluable. Finally, a Spritz bottle. I always keep one of these handy, filled with water, especially if I'm doing some art journaling or some painting or something like that. You can get lots of different effects using water. I use this when I'm doing polymer clay work. If I don't want 2 layers of clay to actually stick together, I can spritz it with water, put one piece of clay on top of the other, roll it out and then separate them out as if they've never actually touched. You can also use these to make up your own sprays from acrylic paint, and I will be doing a video in the future about that. One of the things I will mention, if you're going to make sprays out of it, is to cut this down. As you can see, that reaches the bottom of the bottle, and if we were to add acrylic paint and water or whatever, acrylic paint will settle at the bottom and it will clog that up. So if you cut it about 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 centimetre short of the bottom, it's less likely to get clogged up. Once these are clogged up, they're very difficult to unclog. That one I think I bought in a set from one of the pound shops. These Spritz bottles come in sets of 5 or 6 and they are marketed specifically for crafters. As you can see, I've made a spray up of this one. I have cut down the pipe so it's about 5mm short at the bottom, and I've added a metal ball bearing just so when I shake that up it agitates any solids that are in the bottle and stops it from clogging up the tube and the actual spray head itself. I hope you found this video useful. If you have, please give us a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please subscribe to our channel.